What up, Wizards? It's Dev from The Place, and it's time for my favorite video of each season. And this time, it was actually a pretty easy list to put together. You see, on the one hand, you got a bunch of Magic players that aren't even looking at this set whatsoever. Fewer eyes means more sleepers. But on the other hand, even the people who are looking at this set, and a lot of them who are excited about it, still don't take this set very seriously in Standard. And that is a recipe for a set that'll catch you in a back attack. And that means it's going to get to hit you before you hit it. That's what a back attack is. Look, I hope you played like a Final Fantasy or two, or at the very least you're culturally aware of it, because there might be a reference or two or three in this video from time to time. Look, normally you might have to attack a sleeping card in order to wake it up. Again, that's Final Fantasy rules talking, but instead in this video I think I'll try positivity. It's helped me get through life so far. Let's see if it helps me get through this video. I think there's plenty of cards in this set that are flying well beneath everyone's radar, and there are a lot of these cards people aren't even aware of. And again, some of the ones that you are aware of, you may have just skipped over because this set's terrible, but I actually think there's plenty of playable stuff in here. So let's get to the top 10 sleepers in Final Fantasy. And I'm your favorite Magic channel's favorite Magic channel. Best believe that the professor go bananas for my deck tech. And we're back, and we can go ahead and get to the list, y'all. Unlike a Final Fantasy game, I'm not going to make you go through like a 3.5 hour extended tutorial disguised as gameplay before you even know what's going on. You come to my channel, and you don't even have to do the Midgar part. You just get right to Nibelheim, baby. But anyway, we got 3 honorable mentions that I want to start things off with today, but don't worry, I'm not going to belabor it too much. One of these I basically have no real faith in, but wouldn't it be cool? Another one I have a lot of faith in, but it's not very interesting. And then the third one is my actual honorable mention. So with that in mind, I want to just throw Emperor of Alamesia up on the screen. This is the guy that I really want to have some amount of faith in, right? Because this is just 2 mana for an Izzet mana dork to let you cast non-creature spells and stuff. And then eventually you get enough counters on him and he flips over in this thing that just ends the game the moment he attacks. And that seems okay, at least. I do think there's a bunch of fun stuff you can do with this guy that might be really cool to pull off. My problem is that all that stuff is probably also dumb. You know, like, there might be something there with, like, Picnic Ruiner's Adventure Mode, because that puts counters on it, and it costs 4 or more mana, so that maybe you're doing something, but doesn't that seem a little bit dumb? Why put yourself through all that trouble? Why go on that 20% incline track when you could instead just play like Izzet Cutter in the same color combination and take that same track, but downhill instead, right? I just think there's probably better things you could be doing than this, but I'm not sure there's more fun things you could be doing than this, and everyone wants to play a card called the Lord Master of Hell, so I'm rooting for him. But the card that I'm way more confident about, but a lot less interested in, is You and I Alone. But never mind, it's 2025. Do not sing Michael Jackson, kids. If you want to know why, just look up Michael Jackson, kids. But anyway, this is a Might of Old Crosa in a white coat, and that might actually make it a really relevant Magic card, you know? We haven't really seen like mountains and plains jamming together recently. It's all been about Izzet Cutter, and will I bring that card up with every entry on the list? I guess only time will tell. It's an important card or important deck, but that thing has pushed a lot of other aggro decks out of the format. But now that we have this, it might be time to dust off those Sheltered by Ghosts and stuff like that, because this card is really good in those decks. Just 1 mana for +4/+4 isn't technically better than Monstrous Rage, but it does give better stats than Monstrous Rage at the very least. That's going to be a huge Swift Spear or Emberheart Challenger or whatever. So I do think this card could be pretty relevant. That is a huge stat boost for a tiny cost. But my actual honorable mention this time around, I guess I'll call it that, is Travel the Overworld. This is 2 mana for 4 cards if you do it right, but I'll contend that even if it's 3 or 4 mana for 4 cards, you're still kind of doing it right. The first thing I'll point out is that maybe the best standard card in the entire set is a town. We'll talk about that when we get to the top 25 standard cards. Don't worry, it's just a couple of days away. Hold on, just be patient, we'll get there. But there's other towns in the set that look playable, especially the dual land towns, if you're in a kind of town-centric deck. But even stuff like Adventurer's Inn looks decent depending on how many colors you're in. And especially Balam Garden, that looks like a fine one. We'll talk more about it later. Foreshadowing is a literary device. All I'm going to say for now is that there is potential, at the very least, for a sort of control-focused town deck that's looking to play a lot of sweepers or counter spells and nicely, this is in the same color as counterspells and such. So even if you have to wait until really late in the game to play this, as long as you're only paying 2 mana for it and you're leaving counter shields and removal shields and stuff like that up otherwise, I think there's plenty of room in your deck for a card like this. So again, potentially 2 mana for 4 cards is always going to be something that could be broken if done right. But since we're on the overworld, let's pause for a second and thank the sponsor of this video, you guys, over on the Patreon. Check out the Patreon. It's just $1 a month to join the squad. And you can support the channel. It's how I live my life. So thanks for everybody over at the Patreon. There's not really a sponsor for this video. There usually isn't. In like 10 years, I think I've had 3 sponsors. I like to keep it that way, and Patreon helps me do that. But anyway, let's move on to the actual list now that I've faked you out and you've scrubbed ahead too far. Number 10 is Red Mage's Rapier. During preview season, I had a couple people in the comments tell me that I'm not saying it right. I'm aware that I'm not saying it right. That's how I like to say it, and I don't like to say it the other way. But what I do like to say is that this is just a slick shot in a red coat. It's got the same color code as a slick shot. Apparently a couple of keyword abilities and 2 rare slots is worth like $15. So what a difference, right? If you want to make like a budget version of a mono red deck, you could always slot this in instead of slick shot show off. But honestly, I think the ability to make more or less any creature into a slick shot show off is a pretty okay magic card. Am I wrong? I mean, first of all, it comes with a creature, so what are you whinging about? But even if you lose the creature, then suddenly it might cost a few mana to equip. I'll give you that. But on a kind of later turn, if they haven't shut the game out yet, then it's not unbelievable for a mono red mage to say, play a Swift Spear into a Monster's Rage or Shock Effect, a Burst Lightning, something like that, after getting this equipped. And then suddenly, you know, that's a huge burst of damage off the top of your library. It may have cost you some mana, but again, being able to suit up any creature with the slick shot wings seems pretty good. Well, not the wings because it doesn't fly, but you see what I'm trying to say here. Kind of the pseudo prowess that a slick shot show off has goes well on basically any creature in a red X deck. Also kind of cool that it is a non-creature, so if you've already got one on the table and you play another one, it'll trigger the first one. And your Slick Shot show-offs, your Monastery Swift Spears, all your Prowess guys and stuff. I just kind of like the fact that this is a creature that is also a non-creature to trigger Prowess effects. You might not agree with me now, I understand why. It looks like a pretty flimsy sword indeed, but in a couple of weeks' time when you got mice swinging this thing around all wild at you, you might say, touché. Oh, and by the way, if you're new around here, my jokes are all like that. They're really, really bad, so with that in mind, let's move on to another common equipment that I think might actually have something to do in this format, and that is Dark Knight's Sword, or DKS, which sounds like dicks. And honestly, I think we'll understand why when we have to play against it here in a week or so. I just think that a free equip is nothing to sneeze at, even if you're Chupon. You get it? Because he does the sneeze thing. Are these Final Fantasy jokes landing? I'm just not sure, honestly. But anyway, a free equip on a +3/+0, I don't care if it costs 3 mana to get the thing out in the first place. It goes really well on a bunch of 2 drops. And even if you want to play it off curve, just imagine throwing this on the Carsey Revenant or something. Suddenly, it doesn't matter that you had to pay a few life to do that. Matter of fact, this works really, really well on lifelink creatures in general. Like, if you throw it on a Cecil, then suddenly he's a 5-power Death Touch guy. That's kind of really good. But the moment he flips over, if he's still wearing the sword, then suddenly you've got, what, a 7-power lifelinker? Also seems okay. In the game, Cecil actually has to give up the Dark Sword when he becomes a Paladin, but in Magic rules, there's nothing saying you have to do that, so a 7-power lifelinker will be yours. And there's nothing that Square Enix can do about it. So I just really, really like this card, just for its potential on a couple of specific creatures, but honestly, those creatures are in the deck I want to put the card in, so I can forgive that. And honestly, the more I think about it, there's more than just a couple of creatures this works on in that deck, right? You can throw this on a Sinkhole Surveyor on curve and suddenly swing in with a 5-power flyer that turn, or just hold up a 4-power flyer if you'd rather do that. There's a lot of really good things this could do, and I just cannot overstate how good a free equip can be, even if it costs you some life. But my number 8 here is the Lunar Whale. Whoa, hold on, chill out. I didn't say nothing about your mama. I didn't say nothing about your mama. We're talking about a magic card here. Although I could understand the confusion. Got him. Anyway, this is going to be a bomb in draft right here. Like in sealed or whatever kind of limited you want to play. You're Cuban? I don't know. This is going to be really, not Cuban, the nationality. Are you cubing is what I... Sometimes I speak too fast. Anyway, if you're cubing, this could be great too. But ultimately, I just think that this could actually, break out of those formats and be a real standard card. Are you from Cuba, by the way? Like, if you are, let me know in the comments section. Welcome to the channel. Isn't YouTube a beautiful place when you really think about it? Bringing people from all over the world together to discuss their hobbies and interests. I'm sorry I made that joke about your mom earlier. Your mom's pretty. We got a little thing going on. I didn't know how to break it to you. Either way, the Lunar Whale is a good Magic card. Have I actually said much of support why this is a good Magic card? This is just a card draw engine in certain decks, and I'm not sure what those decks are in Standard. I've had a actual example of a deck I want to put a card in for every card on the list so far, but this one I can't really. Maybe like a Teamer mid-range or something. Look, just the function of the card, the text box is almost good enough by itself. I'm not sure that it's going to create whole new styles of deck, but if there is like a blue mid-range deck that maybe doesn't want to leverage Enduring Curiosity, I guess it could leverage this instead. Is that the weakest argument I've ever made for a card on a Sleepers video? I think it's the most reliant on all the jokes that I've just come up with. I don't write these videos. I just get on the couch and I turn the camera on and I'm like, what if we said this funny thing? And it just kind of works out. I'm not sure that this one exactly did, but when it comes to the Lunar Whale, I should point out that this is a decently statted thing that is fairly easy to crew and will create a lot of card advantage for you over the course of the game if you can make it work out. My number 7 is Hero, the cat. He's definitely a sleeper. A lot of you guys know Igby and Ziggy especially. Some of you know the chicken, right? But I don't know how many people actually know Hero, and he is a sleeper cat. He's a very, very good boy. He likes to hang out on the edge of the bed while we sleep and stuff. He likes love. He starts purring the moment you touch him. Just real sleeper of a cat. Do not sleep on this boy over here, but I guess if I had to keep talking about Magic cards, my number 7 is Laughing Mad. This may cost like 50% more than something like Demand Answers, but you get to cast it twice. And I think that could make a huge difference in kind of control-y decks, especially control-y decks that don't mind discarding cards. Maybe they got other stuff with flashback. Maybe they want to reanimate something. And I'm not saying that that means that we're going to splash red in the Omniscience deck so we can play Laughing Mad. I don't think that it's really at that point, but I do think it's some point during its standard lifespan, there could be a control deck or maybe some sort of, instant speed reanimator-y sort of hybrid that could leverage this card very easily. Just like Deep Analysis, or say Faithless Looting, which is another card this kind of reminds me of. This has the ability in the late game to just turn like dead draws into real draws, only again, unlike some of those other cards, it lets you do it on your opponent's instep, which could just be a massive deal. So, I don't know, I see a lot of people skipping over this card, but I think it really does have some potential. And if you don't agree, and you're typing out some sort of angry comment right now, you're mad. And I'm laughing. Number 6 is Sarah Faren. I have heard precisely no chatter whatsoever about this lady, and that is kind of insane because there's a lot of really good legendary setups with her. Now, for one, there's already a Naya Legends deck in the format. You don't see it too often on the arena, but it pops up in MTGO League results and even challenges from time to time. It plays Bizas and Roxannes and a few other Naya legend things, and this could make those Bizas cost 2, the Roxannes cost 3. That is really good cost reduction, but there's also an opportunity to build like a really low to the ground sort of Abzan legendary deck with 1-drops like Tiny Bones all the way up to 4-drops like Ratadrabbic. You get to that Anthem effect, and suddenly even small dudes are kind of huge. So again, do not sleep on this card. It's the point of the entire video, obviously, but I think Sarah Faren is an especially potent card that just no one is on about at all, and I think that's weird. But we're halfway down the list, and for number 5, we'll look at a card that people are really jacked about for Limited, but just haven't really heard much hype about for Standard play, and that bugs me because Battle Menu is so obviously a good card, and if you don't believe me, I'll select Fight, or I might select Item. I could. Maybe you just need a heal potion because you obviously have some sort of status effect, maybe Confuse or Berserk. There's a bunch of decks that this could go into, right? Just a control deck, a blue-white control deck could leverage this both as an instant speed creature and a really good removal spell. 4 power, that's pretty common right now. Not just Bizas, Sheldreds, Overlords, and stuff like that. There's a lot of big creatures in the format that are just naturally swole, right? But there's also any number of Monastery Swift Spears and Mice and stuff. Like the moment that a Monstrous Rage gets cast on anything in this format, it is a viable target for this, but I guess in the worst situations, it can gain you 4 life if it's got nothing better to do, Sometimes you can really blow people out by using it as a combat trick. There's stuff you can do with this besides just the 2 sort of main modes, but just those 2 modes make it a playable card. It wouldn't have to have the other 2, but it does. That's just extra icing on your cake, and I know not everybody likes icing, but I do. But my number 4 sleeper in FF is Opera Love Song. I would sing it, but I've already done that in a video, and my wife is asleep in the next room, so I probably shouldn't chance it. But Opera Love Song is maybe, and I mean this, the best red card in the whole set. It's a 2-mana instant speed draw 2. What do you want? Like in a mice deck or really anything that's, red X, like again, the Corey Steel Cutter deck, you could, for one, in that deck, make it very easy to cast a second spell and get another monk token, right? For just a couple of mana, cast this on your main phase and you will probably find like a 1 or 2 drop spell that you can cast, and then you get a monk token. Gross, but often you can cast this during your opponent's instep and suddenly you've basically drawn 2 cards. You still only have 1 turn to spend them, but you've got a full turn to do so. One of them might be a land drop. There's nothing wrong with that. So there's a lot of really good things about just the card draw mode on this, but there's also a Blades of Velis Veil on this. Just gonna throw it on, why not, and suddenly, if you target, say, an Emberheart Challenger and a Monastery Swiftspear with this, you're coming in for how much damage? Hold on, let me get the calculator out. It appears to be 9 damage if I'm doing the math correctly, and you targeted Emberheart Challenger with something so you get another card off the top of your library. Is the card sounding decent to you yet? Or not? I mean, just as a pump spell, I kind of don't mind this effect right now, but the fact that it comes stapled to draw 2, it just seems like something that every red aggro deck is going to want to leverage in some way or another. Last thing about this card, though, I should take the opportunity because I don't know if I'll ever be able to really talk about the card again. Maybe it's terrible, no one ever plays it, and the words opera love song never cross my lips again unless I'm literally talking about FF6, but why does the card do that? Well, they've done a very good job of translating flavor in design for this set, right? Oh, it does this in the game, so it does this when it's a Magic card, and that makes perfect sense because flavor. This it doesn't really... I don't know why Opera Love Song would do this. Zero clue. Explain it to me in the comments section. I guess there's a fight at the opera with Ultros. Why does it draw you the cards? Is it because you have to read a book before you go on stage? You do. Is that what reading books draws cards in Magic, right? Have I figured it out? I'm still not sure, though. I think that's not very good reasoning. Either way, let's move on to the top 3 here. Number 3 is Restoration Magic. Now, this does what it's supposed to. It's just a single mana to save a creature from just about anything. Hexproof and indestructible is not necessarily a get-out-of-jail-free card, but it will stop most effects from happening to your dude. For what it's worth, I also really like this as a protective piece for Hope S-Time, but that seems like more of a commander card right there, but I guess it does protect your Hope really nicely and occasionally mill them from cards because you did that. But either way, man, I just think that a card that saves your guy while also still kind of putting the game a little bit more out of reach for opponents could potentially be very, very good. Again, I just like the floor on this more than anything else, but I like that it also has a ceiling higher than the floor. I like a room I can live in. By the way, I told you Hero was a sleeper. There he is, being a sleeper. Number 2 is Balam Garden. Again, foreshadowing is a literary... I can see how this could look like absolute trash, and I could also see how it could look like the beginning of a cycle, but it's not. It's not. It's the only land like this in the entire set, but I guess it makes sense, again, when you consider what Balam Garden is in FF8. It's an airship and it's a land. Again, they nailed the flavor on this one, but not Opera Love Song. Either way, again, I think there could be a Towns deck that leverages both this and Travel the Overworld and maybe 1 or 2 other town cards, but I'm not honestly sure how many you have to leverage to make cards like this good. Again, if you're playing a bunch of sweepers and removal spells and card draw effects like Travel the Overworld, then suddenly you can control the game enough to where this becomes a massive threat. I mean, throughout the years, control decks have really liked to have a powerful flyer that can draw cards, and this is those things. Only you didn't pay any mana for it up front, and if you have enough lands in play, it's just a 2 mana, like, giant flyer. Puts cards in your hand. I'm just not really sure what the downside is to this. But to my mind, the number 1 card in this set that could use some more attention in Standard is Zenos Yay Galvus. Now, a lot of people see that once this flips over, it has what appears to be Commander text on it. And that sets off alarm bells in their head, and they're like, oh, this is a Commander card. Who cares? I don't care. I don't care about this card. It's Commander. But I think you should actually examine this a little bit more closely. On the front half, this is a Massacre Worm that cost 1 less mana. Somehow you're still not in. I don't know why you're not in, but this can sweep all of the, Corey Steel Cutter tokens and stuff like that, plus otters and Monastery Swiftspears and little mice and stuff like that. There's a lot of aggro in the format. Now, you got to get the 5 mana and cast this guy in the first place, but if you actually do that, and a couple of well-timed removal spells should help get you there, then suddenly this is going to wipe a ton of teams in Standard straight off the board. save for one guy. But the good thing about that is that all you have to do is go for the throat or cut down or whatever that one last guy that you chose when Zenos came into play. And suddenly you have, what, an 8/8 flyer? Like, it really doesn't matter that it has commander text on it. You paid 5 mana for a guy that swept like 3 things off your opponent's side of the table. And then all you had to do was finish one guy off, and suddenly you win the game, chief. Like, they have to deal with this. And there aren't a whole lot of red-based decks that have the ability to do that. And this doesn't just have to go in like mono black decks. This could go really well in a Golgari shell, and Golgari's already a decent deck in the format. If you go turn 1 Lunar Elves, you're getting this on turn 4. That ain't bad. And of course, if you do the classic turn 1 Lunar Elves, turn 2 Overlord of the Hauntwoods, you can play Zenos on turn 3, and that should be good against nearly any aggro deck. I really do think this is kind of a must-answer card in a lot of situations, or you're done. So, and cards like that tend to be really, really good. The game becomes about this card the moment that it comes down, and again, those cards tend to be good too. So I just wouldn't pass this one up. But that's all I got for this one. Just let me know what your sleepers are for this set, and if you want some more underrated cards, go on over to Power Dragon's channel. I'll leave a link in the description, as usual, before season starts. I just talked with him about all the underrated and overrated cards in the set. I chose 5 completely unique cards that weren't on the sleepers list for the underrated talk. So if you want more of this, then I guess go over to his channel and check that video out. And of course, subscribe, because in just a couple of days, we'll be putting out the top 25 standard cards. Yeah, 25 standard cards. Normally, I do a top 25 and it's just like Commander, Standard, Modern, everything's mixed in, whatever. But I was actually able to pick 25 standard cards I think could have a chance at seeing play in my favorite format. And I know not many people take this thing seriously in Standard, but again, I think that that might be a just bad opinion. I really do think there's plenty of cards in the set that could potentially see standard play, or at least a lot more than people are giving the set credit for. So make sure you check out that list in a couple of days, and if there's a card that didn't make this list, might be on that one. I might think it's really good. But anyway, guys, just do the YouTube stuff on the way out. Make sure you hit the button shaped like a thumb. You can sub to the sandwich, help us get to 150K. We're almost there. Just like 14K left. That's not bad, but you could also check out that Patreon. One more plug for that. It's just $1 a month, and you'll be able to vote on what decks we do in Final Fantasy Standard and in Final Fantasy Commander, for that matter. But anyway, y'all, hope you enjoyed it. Hit me up with your sleeper picks in the comments section, and I will catch you cats later. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.